How's it going, OFPs? And welcome to another episode of the Off Field Players Podcast, the only podcast for aspiring sports industry professionals. I'm your host, Phil Paul, and I hope everybody's having an awesome week or weekend by the time that you're listening to this. And actually, by the time that you're listening to this is actually last week, transitioning over to next week. And I also just want to let everybody be up to date on the new episode that just recently came out, the previous one, I should say, where I talk about how Air accurately depicts the intensity of working in the sports industry. So if you hadn't had a chance to go watch that episode, I highly recommend that you go and check that one out before you continue on with this one. And also make sure to follow and subscribe to all of the platforms that the podcast is being produced on. From the audio side, we're on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Radio Public. Make sure to follow the podcast on those platforms to stay up to date with new episodes. And also, if you're watching the video version of this, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the Off Field Players Podcast on YouTube. And and you're welcome to share the link with anybody that you know that's interested in wanting to work into the sports industry, or anybody that's just interested in learning more about the sports industry as a whole. Today, I have a very special guest with me, and interestingly enough, this guy happens to be in the motorsports spectrum. He actually runs his own YouTube channel based around sim racing. For anybody that's interested in wanting to learn more about sim racing, get into sim racing, or even just curious about the whole idea of what sim racing is, I highly recommend that you go and to subscribe to this guy's channel. And even for me personally, I've met this guy over the summer. Like, we were actually both interning at NASCAR. He was also in the NASCAR Diversity Internship Program with me, but he highly recommended that he wanted to do an exclusive interview with me on the podcast. So definitely happy to have him on here. And we're just going to call him Oscar. But when you go to his YouTube channel, he goes by OC Racing. So I'm happy to welcome Oscar to the Off Field Players Podcast to talk a little bit more about what he does on the sim racing side, like his experience interning at NASCAR and his life as a sim racer. So, Oscar, I'm going to give you the floor, man, and just introduce yourself. Tell everybody about like what you do, and yeah, go ahead, man. The floor is yours.
For sure. I appreciate it, Phil. Very nice introduction. As you mentioned, my name is Oscar. I'm a full time student. A lot of people don't know that. So, apart from everything that I do in my academics, I also run a company called OC Racing. Legally, it's an LLC, so OC Racing LLC. Not only am I on YouTube, but I'm also on different social media platforms. I have my own website. And together, I amass hundreds of thousands of views talking about everything related to sim racing per month. And this whole OC racing thing has kind of spiraled out of control since it first started. I'm now reaching more people than I ever thought I would. I get in products every single day from companies that want me to make reviews, from companies that want me to compare their products, to make content, etc. And so every single day it takes up more and more time. It's also a lot more rewarding, and it pays off more, as time goes by. So outside of just all my OC racing stuff, with which does take up most of my day, this summer I was also a intern at NASCAR with you, Phil. It was probably the best summer of my life. So much fun, so many great memories, and so many things I'm excited to talk about regarding that internship. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. My days are fairly busy, but I like to remain productive. I like doing what I do, and I'm passionate about motorsports. So it's been a lot of fun.
Oscar, it's definitely great to have you on here on the podcast. And also, when we first met, it was during the orientation weekend that we had together in Charlotte, with us being introduced into the NASCAR world, and especially of you, knowing that this was, a big moment for you to come on to NASCAR and be a part of the. Well, actually, I'm not going to spoil too much. I'll let Oscar speak for himself on that regard. But just being able to meet with you, and also you showing me your YouTube channel and what you do, and like I highly recommend that you guys go check out his channel. Like, I mean, his content is incredible as far as what he does on the sim racing side, which, and I'm not going to try to steal the shine away from him. I'm trying to hold back on trying to hype him up for what he for you guys going to his channel. But I highly recommend that you guys go check out Oscar's channel again. And he has a goal. He told me before the show that he has a goal to reach 100,000 subscribers, and he's really close to it too. Right now, I believe you're at 72,000 I would say. Is that
Right
right?
around there, yeah. Right around
Okay.
there.
So yeah, and yeah, hopefully, for the OFPs that are tuning in, highly recommend that you guys go subscribe to his channel to help him reach that 100,000 mark. But yeah, Oscar, it's definitely awesome to have you on here just to introduce the idea of sim racing too, and also, and then this isn't like like an ad for anything, but I know with the upcoming film Gran Turismo, it's supposed to be coming out this weekend, or by the time that people are listening to this, it came out last weekend. I know it goes into the world of how a sim racer became a professional race car driver, and I'm not sure if you have those same kind of aspirations, but it would be cool to hear what your thoughts are on like Gran Turismo making a movie telling the story of John Martinborough and how sim racing was able to help him get his start into professional racing.
Yeah, so that entire concept of that movie is so interesting to me. When I first heard of it, I was a little bit, in shock, and I didn't actually think it was going to be like a full feature film that was going to be shown on movie theaters across the world. Um, but when I realized, how significant it was, I was, one happy about it because it's what I do, it's what I'm passionate about. But also a little bit surprised just because sim racing is still so niche that I was really wondering how Sony decided that creating a movie on this type of topic for such a niche market would bring in viewerships and profits in the future. So I've talked to a lot of people in the industry talking about why is this movie actually a thing? Like, is it profitable from a business side? Is there enough people who are interested in this to actually go to the box office and watch? And the general consensus that I've understood is that Sony isn't really making this movie to make money from the movie. It's more of a like a growth for their programs for sim racing in general. They make Gran
Mm,
Turismo. They have all of these things involved in sim racing. So the movie is like a big promotional piece almost. And it's also a company that is so big and has so many different, sides that it's a very like a very vertical company in the sense that they do the production, they have the cameras, they have everything that they need from Sony. So their
hmm
investment in it, although it's massive, it's not necessarily something that would be as time consuming or as like demanding in terms of hardware and stuff like that for them to produce. But either way, the movie seems super cool. It's actually releasing tomorrow by the time we're filming this video. I am
Right.
planning on watching it. Not sure if I want to make any specific video on the movie, but what I have been doing is preparing a lot of content related to entry level sim racing. So in my videos, a lot of what I do is talk about hardware. And I know that, or at least I anticipate that with this movie, a lot of new people are going to be coming into the sim racing world looking for beginner level products. What's the cheapest wheel and pedals that they can get up and racing? And so I've tailored my content to create videos talking about those subjects, which I anticipate people are going to be searching for. So that's a little bit behind the
hmm
strategy of it. With regards to the movie itself, like you mentioned, it's telling the story about a sim racer who, with his skills in the virtual scene, eventually made it into real world motorsports. And you slightly mentioned that you wonder if I have similar aspirations. Um, it's funny. It's yes and no. In a way, I've already experienced something very similar to what the plot of the story is talking about.
Right.
Um, just about a year ago, I was invited to go out to Canada by one of the companies that I was working with at the time. They're also a sim racing company, but they're like, "Hey, we want you to come out to Canada. We're going to give you the keys to our Porsche Cayman GT4, which is essentially like it's a road legal race car, pretty much. Manual transmission, 6 speed, goes 0 to 60. Enough time to go to jail." And they flew me out to Canada, Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, which is
hmm
it's recognized as one of the most dangerous racetracks in North America. They gave
Uh,
me the keys. They're like, "Go have fun, make a video on it."
mm,
And so in a way, I also went from the simulator to the real world, based, solely off of sim racing. Clearly, it's a little bit of a different pathway. In the movie, he got there because he's fast. I only got
right.
there because I made content. But a win is a win in my books, and that was probably one of the best days of my life. So that's a story that I love telling, and one of my favorite videos of all time that you can find on my channel. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm
Yeah.
excited for the movie.
Yeah, and definitely, Oscar. That's awesome to hear. And when we could touch a little bit more on that later on in the episode, but I think when it comes to how I always viewed sim racing, and don't get me wrong, like I played video games growing up based on racing. I was a Gran Turismo guy. Of course, I played the NASCAR video games coming up, and also like what I do now, just like on my leisure time. I like to go on YouTube and I like to watch gamers, like the play through like a Formula One career
Yeah,
mode or NASCAR career mode, even like iRacing, which is like something that I'm sure you learned a lot more about, or like was able to work close with during the summer, and what you
absolutely.
did with NASCAR. And yeah, and I do feel that with the way that sim racing has been going, even during the pandemic when everybody was cooped up inside, and even professional drivers having to resort to using simulators to continue to stay focused on racing and even get their reps up for tracks that they probably never raced at, or probably weren't able to get any practice time at during that time frame when everybody was in quarantine. That's when I thought the rise of sim racing was really just going to boom. Like the market was going to become massive, and then of course, with the excitement revolving around the Gran Turismo movie, I'm sure there's going like you mentioned. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be inspired by this story and want to use this as a way of just either doing sim racing as a hobby, or doing sim racing as a way to get into motorsports. But I kind of want to go a little bit more back on how you were able to get into sim racing to begin with. Like, what would you say was your first introduction to sim racing, or how did it all come?
Yeah, so I think first it's important to clarify the difference between, a racing game, like Forza, Motorsport, Horizon, Gran Turismo, etc.
Need for
And it
Speed,
and
even.
it yeah, exactly. And all those which everybody has very fond memories of, especially growing up,
Yeah.
in our age. And then a racing simulator is, actually games that aren't really games, they're more like simulations. They try to mimic perfectly all of the aspects of a car. So whether that be the tire wear, the aerodynamics, how it handles, laser scanning the tracks to be pinpoint accurate, having every single banner mimic the real world so that race car drivers can actually use it to practice. So
Mhm.
there's obviously a difference between a racing sim and a racing game. My first experience with a racing game was early 2000s, back when the original Xbox came out.
Mhm.
The original Xbox came out. I bought my parents bought because I was like 10 at the time, or probably younger than that.
Mhm.
One of the original Microsoft, or I think it was Logitech. It was a Logitech branded wheel, but it actually was licensed with NASCAR, so it does have the NASCAR logo on it, which is kind of funny how it all came full circle. I had a little wheel and pedals. Obviously, it wasn't realistic at all, but it was fun enough for me to play. I think it was the original Forza Motorsport,
Mhm.
which really got me into cars and everything related to all that. It wasn't until COVID, so around 2020, that I started to create content and get a lot more into what is sim racing. And the reason behind that was because I, like millions of others, were stuck at home, a little bit bored. I've always been a car guy. I wanted to, look into the market to see what wheel and pedals were worth buying. I was looking at reviews, looking at stuff online, and the content that was there simply was not great. A lot of it was very, very long videos, people talking for extended periods of time only to answer the question of whether it's worth it or not. And I was like, I can do better than this. I had some video experience, some experience with content creation, etc. And like many people at the time, I also wanted to start a YouTube channel, grow it out and whatnot, because everybody dreams of that at one point or another. And if you don't, you're lying. So I started creating videos, actually not on YouTube, but on TikTok, because TikTok
Mhm.
was absolutely booming at that time.
Right.
I bought a Logitech G29, which everybody in sim racing knows is like the entry level wheel and pedal set that everybody buys. Um, I had a decent setup. I had a nice chassis. I had the monitors and all that because I've been into gaming my whole life, so I had a lot of those stuff already. And I created several videos of me actually just sitting down, racing in the simulator, shifting gears and all that. Recorded it 60-second format, vertical, posted it, and one of the videos went like incredibly viral, way over 1 million views, all that. And I like to think that I'm fairly clever. So as soon as that video on TikTok started going viral and I was gaining followers and followers and followers on TikTok, I reached out to several sim racing companies. So companies that create hardware, the wheels, the pedals, all of that. I
Hmm.
was basically saying, "Hey, my name's Oscar. I've started this TikTok account. My videos are getting significant views because they really were. Like I said, TikTok was booming back then. Do you guys want to send me products for me to feature in my videos?" And I kind of sent that as a kind of like a yeah, right type of thing. And one of the biggest companies in sim racing, a company called Thrustmaster,
Yep.
they were
Hmm.
like, "Yeah, we'll hook you up." And not only were they like, "Yeah, we'll hook you up," but they also said, "Oh, and we'll also hook you up with another company called Next Level Racing, who works closely with us, and they make sim racing cockpits, so the entire
Hmm.
chassis that cost hundreds of dollars." And the guys on Next Level Racing were like, "Yeah, I love what you're doing. We're sending you some stuff too." And so pretty much overnight, I went from having a very entry level sim racing setup to having a fairly high end setup with expensive gear, expensive pedals, and a sim racing cockpit that could have only dreamed of a week before. And so that's where OC racing pretty much started, because after that, I kept on making content on TikTok. But eventually, TikTok is a very hard platform in the sense that you really have to be innovative and doing stuff like following the trends and doing new stuff every single day, or else your content is going to kind of fade out. You can't just be doing the same thing. And that's not something that I was anticipating. I was like, I can't continue doing this on TikTok. First of all, I didn't find much satisfaction creating 60-second short form videos.
Hmm.
And second of all, like I just mentioned, it was clearly not where the algorithm wanted me to be. So I started my YouTube channel, OC Racing, and I just started creating review videos like the ones that I wanted to watch. Short form, quick to the point, nice cinematic graphics, everything, displayed well, and all the information given at a fairly, quick speed. So I pretty much created the content that I wanted to actually watch based off of the hardware that I had access to. And like I said, a lot of people were getting into sim racing at that time. So a lot of people were searching for these things. YouTube is extremely hard to grow in, but I guess it was like a culmination of luck and timing that worked well. And so my videos quickly got views. And since I was creating fairly innovative content for sim racing, a lot more companies saw what I was doing. And regardless of me still having a small follower count, were like, "Hey, we recognize that your videos are different from what we're used to seeing in the sim racing world. So here, take our products, make videos on it, and have a blast." And that's pretty much what I did. And ever since then, it's just been um, growth, but so much work. Like I can't emphasize how much time and effort I've put into what OC Racing has become, because not only is it on YouTube, but it's on different social media platforms now. It's on a website. Now I manage products coming in and out. I manage conversations with companies. I was just a few days ago, I was in Austin, Texas with another sim racing company that wanted me to go film over there.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like I said earlier, it's kind of spiraled out of control since then. But that is the full breakdown of the origins of OC Racing. And actually, I don't think I've ever told anybody online. So it would be a cool exclusive for you, Phil.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome, Oscar, and yes, and it's great that we can hear it exclusively on the Off Field Players podcast. Just your rise of what OC Racing has become, and also and yeah, like I followed you and I saw you were in Austin. I was wondering what it was for, but now since I know, I mean, it's definitely cool to hear that you were able to take that initiative to reach out to those brands, and those brands like helping you reach out to other brands that maybe probably their competitors, which is maybe uncommon, especially for someone that's trying to buy a product or trying to give them a proper review on it. and
Absolutely.
and I feel like that's like that there is a great message to give to the OFPs. And just because I talked about this in a previous episode where when you're coming into the sports industry, or really just in the industry in general, I think for the time that we're living in now, with the access to like you say, using TikTok, using Instagram, using YouTube as ways to promote a brand, I'm really starting to notice for the people that I come across, and even in my own right, that you have to find ways to promote yourself or at least represent yourself before you can go and represent someone else, especially if you're trying to get in with a particular organization that you want to work with. And for you, using OC racing as the platform to help you get into that area of sim racing, content creating, and really just esports as a whole, it really does show just the innovation that we've become. And also, like you said, you have to make sure you stay up with the trends to make sure that the content doesn't get stale. And it's definitely great to hear how unique, that's your story is behind how OC Racing came to be, and how, you just ran with it, took off. And I just want to know, and it's great that you mentioned just your growth on YouTube and growth on TikTok, because that was those were some of the questions that I haven't planned to ask, but you already did the job, and you answered the questions for me before I was even able to ask them. So thank you for that.
Yeah, feel free
But
to ask again because I have, a lot more to say about certain stuff. So if you have any questions in specific, feel free.
Yeah, for sure. But I kind of want to go a little bit more into the in-depth information in regards to your content. So, you say that you have you have companies send you over equipment like steering wheels, the sim seats, the stick shifts. What what I would like to know, and for it would be curious for the OFPs to also know as well. Like when you're doing these review videos on steering wheels or seats, or even pedals, like what are some of the intricacies you touch on, and what makes the difference between, say, like a good wheel and a bad wheel, a good seat and a bad seat, good pedals and bad pedals? Like what is something that you focus into when you're doing the review videos?
Yeah, so there's obviously a lot to take into consideration. I feel like before you even talk about what is and what is not worth it, which is kind of the main question, which I always try to answer in my review videos, is you have to understand how much the product costs and who the product is targeted for. So while I could say that a $200 Logitech wheel is a good product, it pales in comparison to a $1,500 direct drive system from a higher end company. So it really depends on who the product is targeted for and how much it costs. That being said, there are obviously a lot of things that I look for, especially let's talk about a wheel, for example. So a wheel is made out of, the design of the wheel. Is it a circular wheel? Is it a formula style wheel? Is it there's hundreds of, or probably like dozens of different types of wheels. And then there's the material that the wheel is made out of. Is it made out of leather, synthetic leather, plastic, alcantara, suede? There's, a whole bunch of different things that a company can do to improve or not improve the look and feel of a wheel. And then there's the buttons. How do the buttons feel? How do they react? Do they work? How about the paddle shifters? Are they too loud? Some products have extremely loud paddle shifters, which I've criticized heavily because it's simply something not something that you don't want to have in your house when you have other people living around you or when you have neighbors or something.
Hmm.
And then there's the compatibility. Does the wheel work on Xbox and PlayStation, or does it only work on PC? Does it work on other servo motors, which is basically the thing that provides the feedback of the wheel? And then if we're talking about wheelbases, which is the thing that gives the force, how strong is it? How realistic is it? Can you feel the bumps and the curbs on track? Can you feel the road effects? So there's a lot of stuff that you look for when you're actually testing the product that makes its way into my final recommendation when making a review video. So it's not just a few things that I pinpoint, it's a whole bunch of things. And then realizing how they fit into the price and target market of a product to determine whether it's a good deal or not. Um, and I do get one of the questions that I do often receive is if you're getting these products for free, how are you, maintaining you know, like how am I guaranteed to be honest and, ethical with my reviews if I am getting them for free? I'm not actually paying for them. And the reason is I simply work with so many companies that I get products from competitors all the time. So I don't necessarily have a reason to favor one or the other. And I guess the main thing is in terms of how do I keep my reviews honest and realistic, I could profit significantly by lying about one product in one video, saying, like, for example, if it's a really bad product, but a company's paying me an extremely high commission to sell them, I could say, everybody buy this product, it's the best thing I've ever seen, blah, 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 and then profit significantly in the very short term. But in the long term, once people start to receive those products and realize, wow, this review that this guy made was complete BS, that's when things are going to tank for me. Nobody's going to trust my reviews. People are going to comment on Reddit. They're going to comment on my social media platforms. The sim racing Reddit is huge. That's where a lot of people, enthusiasts, go in and see who's legit and who's not. So as
Mhm.
soon as my reputation tanks, that's when it's over for me as a reviewer. And so that's probably the main thing keeping me ethical and actually honest in my reviews. So that's just a question that I receive a lot, and I know that it was related to your original question since you were talking about my review process. And so, like I said, there's so many things that go on behind the scenes when determining whether it's worth it or not. But hopefully, that gives you a small taste of some of the things I look forward to when I'm actually reviewing and writing out my script for my videos.
Yeah, and we all know, like when it comes to a different product, I could literally go to the grocery store and buy this brand of peanut butter when I heard people say that they don't like that brand, but they probably prefer the other brand that maybe a brand that I might not like. So we obviously know that when it comes to buying particular products, like in your case, like opinions are like it's all subjective. I mean, everybody's going to have their own opinion in regards to what steering wheel was the best, what pedals were the worst, or oh, like the seat is too rough, or oh, like it's the
Right.
seat moves around too much. I mean, yeah, and that's just like the world we live in. I mean, we understand that when it comes to the consumer market, like everybody's out to compete, everybody's out to have their particular preference, especially also trying to find loyalty and that preference. And and I think it's good that we have people like you that do those reviews to give your honest opinion on, oh, like, is this product the best, is going to be the best bang for your buck. And like when it comes down to them executing on making that purchase, and yeah, like they'll be the judge of, oh, like if that steering wheel is best for me. But yeah, it's really great to hear that you like do those kind of reviews, and also it's very unique to just the content that you're creating. But I want to touch a little bit more on just your competitive side when it comes to sim racing. And I know for people probably saying like, oh, feel like I thought this was going to be an episode related more towards what he does off the off the field or like off the track. Well, yeah, in a way it is, because with what Oscar does as a content creator and a reviewer, because in the way when we go more into the atmosphere of esports, like esport gamers are still out to buy the best equipment to stay competitive at the top of the game, especially when it comes to racing. And in a way, I feel like Oscar is kind of like he's like the silent head coach, or like a scout for to provide that equipment for somebody that's trying to become a competitive esports racer, and or sim racer, like in their own right. But yeah, like Oscar, I just want to touch a little bit more on how big of an influence you've had on your viewers, or even just on the landscape of esports. Like, have your product reviews helped like a sim racer, like in any way with their competition?
I get probably dozens or if not hundreds of comments every single week of people saying that, thanks to my reviews, they purchased a product and they're in love with it and that they've taken off seconds from their previous best lap times and whatnot. So, as a product reviewer, yeah, what I say obviously has a big influence on the products that people buy and whether people are happy with them. So that's what I would say with regards to answering that question in particular. But something else that you brought up was how everything that I'm doing in the sim racing world and in my company relates to being an off-field player. And I think it's bigger in the sense that yes, I am into sim racing and it's one of my passions, but I'm equally as passionate for real world motorsports. And so
Mm.
when you realize how I've managed to bring in what I do in the sim racing world to get my foot into the door in real world motorsports, I feel like that's where it's very significant. So when I applied to NASCAR, prior to that, I didn't have any real world sports experience. However, I did have, alongside other stuff, I had this whole OC racing thing, which is, hey, look, it hasn't been in the real world, but regardless of it being in the simulator or not, I've grown this company to this many followers, to this many total views. I produce this type of content. You can look at the graphics that I make, the thumbnails, the quality of my videos, the voice editing, the editing, the filming, and all of that. And that was coming from my boss directly, the main reason why they saw my resume and saw what I've done in the past and said, we want you to be working at NASCAR, which is real world sports. So
Hmm.
that's kind of how I went from everything related to sim racing to getting my foot into the door into NASCAR. So I feel like people have the misconception that everything that they need to do needs to be related to, sports and whatnot if you want to get into that. And while it's definitely significant, I feel like there's also a lot of stuff that you can do behind the scenes, and think outside the box to manage to get your foot into the door into such a competitive industry, which is
Right.
sort of what I've done, and it's
Right.
been very rewarding.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, definitely. That whole idea of like just starting from the ground up with your own brand, like you said, OC Racing's an LLC, so in a way, it makes it a legitimate business that you run, and especially like when you're in the sim racing market, which like you mentioned, is starting to become huge and expansive all across the board, and especially with how all of it kind of ties in with the new age racer, as I like to say, because we look at how motorsports has transcended, or how specific drivers have transcended their careers based off of the strength of what they've done in sim racing. Like we'll touch on NASCAR for example, since you and me were both in it. We look at drivers like William Byron, who started his career through iRacing, or even like Rajat Karuf. He, like, the only way for him to get into sim racing was through iRacing.
Yeah.
Or actually, no, excuse me, not into sim racing, but into professional racing was through iRacing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even, we look at, we could go overseas and look at the F1 drivers. We see Lando Norris. Like, Lando Norris has, made a YouTube channel based around, not just his personal life and his career, per se, but also just what he does on the sim racing side. And even, we've seen Max Verstappen,
Yeah. I
get
think Max
into.
Verstappen's a better example for that.
Exactly. So yeah, we've seen the impact that sim racing can have, like, on pro drivers, even just people that just do it as a hobby for content creating. I'll say, aside, and I'm sure these are probably guys that you're competing with, like, on online and stuff. But like Jimmy Broadbent, he's a sim racer that I've followed, for a few years now. Even Super GT, who does a lot of Gran Turismo content,
Yeah.
and like, I've seen how the growth that he's had, with what he's been able to do through sim racing, and also him doing just like gameplay videos on YouTube, and really just helping him expose into the brand. But I think what I really see in sim racing that I believe separates from maybe real world racing is just the amount of influence that you guys have on just the young demographic. Because we're starting to see how sim racing can make impact on how you guys get partnerships with particular companies, maybe even get sponsorships. I mean, you're tying in that business aspect of what sim racing can provide to a YouTuber, or even just like a casual sim racer, and just carrying on with that, and just letting that be transcend your content, or transcend your follower growth.
Absolutely. I think people underestimate how big sim racing is, or at least is getting. I worked at NASCAR. I was with the esports and gaming team, so I worked with and oversaw a lot of different partnerships. So NASCAR has the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series, which is
Hmm.
streamed, broadcasted every not every Tuesday, but on Tuesday nights. There is so much money that goes into that. So Coca-Cola
That.
being the main sponsor, there's money involved there. Wendy's being a sponsor, money involved there. Logitech, D-Box, Makoni Setup Shop, a bunch of, big brands that are, known worldwide. Like, everybody knows what Wendy's is, everybody knows Logitech, among others. and
Everybody knows
they're all
Coca-Cola.
exactly, and Coca not to mention Coca-Cola, yeah, and they're
Mhm.
all investing, tens of thousands, if not I mean, I can't even talk about the numbers, but you could only imagine, and that's all only being thrown into what is essentially sim racing. So when you think of how niche this really is, but then you realize how many big companies are investing in it and are growing and are continuing to develop their teams. Even if you look at, for example, Formula One, every single Formula One team has an esports division.
Oh, yeah.
Like, imagine Enzo Ferrari, who didn't want to make cars and only wanted to make race cars. Imagine him explaining to him that his brand, that Ferrari now has a virtual racing team. Like, it's insane how big it has gotten and how big it will continue to be. I mean, we mentioned it before. There is a feature film that is going on cinemas across the world talking about sim racing. Like,
Right.
it's a mind-boggling how big this market is. Um, but I'm glad it's going that way. It's only good for motorsport fans in general, and for everybody who's passionate about this hobby, which would, motorsports is unaccessible for the masses. So sim racing is providing that opportunity, and it's great to see.
Yeah, and I want to touch on what you just said there as far as just accessibility, because when we think about motorsports, we understand that there's a ton that goes into it, especially with the amount of money that you need to just be able to get into motorsports in the first place. I think with the benefit and one of the pros of being in sim racing, I think like going forward, like long term, I think it's going to eliminate some of those barriers to entry for people that are really serious about racing or really like want to take up racing as a career, whether that's on the professional landscape like in real life or even the virtual landscape through the esports product. And I just think with how sim racing is and just the affordability and the accessibility that it can provide to young people or maybe people that may not come from prosperous means, there is a lot of potential and a lot of growth that the market can have. And I know we've touched on this earlier in the show, where talking about the Gran Turismo movie, where I believe with how much they've marketed this movie and how and the impact that I believe is going to have. Like I'm gonna try to go see it this weekend if I can, if I have the time to. But I just feel like that there's gonna be a spike somewhere to where like sim racing is going to take off and just continue to be that gateway for a lot of people that are interested in motorsports in some form, but also interested in wanting to understand how they can, grow a brand through what they do as a sim racing content creator, or really just someone that can help benefit the landscape of esports in the realm of sim racing.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting to see how big the impact of that movie really will be. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't know if it's going to be a massive success that's going to drive a huge wave of new players, or if it's just going to be kind of a thing that happened and everybody moved on from. So
Mm.
I want to be optimistic about it. Hopefully, that's what ends up happening, but I guess time will tell. Ultimately, the trajectory of sim racing has been increasing ever since, since a long time ago. It just got accelerated tremendously through everything that happened, earlier in the 2020s. So I think that one way or the other, sim racing will continue to expand. It will continue to grow, and hopefully, we'll start seeing more stories of people who, via the sim, were able to either make it to the real world, actual thing, or two, just make it really high up there in the esports realm of sim racing to the point where they can be successful and have, a prosperous career as a sim racer, not necessarily as a real race car driver. So it's exciting things that the future holds, and I guess we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And Oscar, we could start to go now a little bit more into your time as the NASCAR intern working with the esports and gaming department, and I've seen the work that you've been able to put out with them, and over the summer, and it came out fantastic, and especially with the case study competition too. I know
Did you
like the
see
case.
mine?
I did, yeah. Like the case study. When we had the case study competition. I thought it was pretty cool, like how you guys wrapped up the esports. I mean, the presentation was incredible. Like, don't like just like out of the park. You guys killed it.
I appreciate
And
it.
yeah, and I just know with where NASCAR currently is on the gaming spectrum. Of course, we can talk about iRacing, but I feel like with iRacing, it kind of speaks for itself for where it's taken off, especially with Dale Earnhardt Jr. being a strong backer for iRacing, and yes, even also the other drivers that have been able to break into NASCAR through it. I think with where NASCAR is right now in regards to console gaming, they've been kind of being held back in some ways with like, and I'm sure you've probably kept up with the deal going on with the motorsports games, like how NASCAR had to like fight their way out of that deal, especially with not really seeing much success in the recent NASCAR game that was released.
Yeah.
But and the one thing that because I grew up like during the time where EA Sports or Electronic Arts had the developing rights for NASCAR, and even seeing how Technics and 404 Games have been able to help NASCAR produce a game yearly. At times, where I've seen how NASCAR is kind of fallen off a little bit when it came to the console gaming. They're not competing up with like a NBA and how they release the 2K games, or like how Sony releases like the MLB The Show games, or even like EA with that now the EA Sports football club sports games, and now or even with Madden.
Yeah.
So I just want to know, like, from what you were able to pick up during the summer, working with esports, working with gaming, how can NASCAR go forward into like reaching the audience of the serious sim racers, but also trying to reach the audience of the casual gamers. Like, say if I'm a kid that's coming home from school and just wants to, like plug in the NASCAR game and just, just for some downtime. Like, how can NASCAR capitalize on the changes that they're going to be making soon with the console on the console gaming side?
Right. So one of the main things I learned working at NASCAR is, the gaming and esports team is that you hear iRacing a lot when you hear about NASCAR, but in reality, the gaming and esports team is so, so much more than that. And the plans that they have are a lot more ambitious. So it's not just talking about iRacing and perfect simulation of, NASCAR in the virtual world, but it's also a lot about how can we use gaming in terms of games that have nothing to do with racing, such as Roblox, such as Fortnite,
Hmm.
Minecraft, Rocket League,
Hmm.
etc. How can we use those games and reach those audiences to put NASCAR in front of hundreds of millions of people and say, "Hey, this is NASCAR. Now, from this game, come watch our actual races and come get engaged with what our core product actually is." And so that's one of the main things that I discovered. It's not necessarily all about iRacing and all about the perfect simulation. It's really about how can we use gaming and reach those hundreds of millions of eyeballs and young people to bring them over here to watch our core product and engage with us like we've never seen before. Because as you know, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers know, NASCAR struggles to get young eyeballs to the core product, which is the actual racing. So
Hmm.
in terms of iRacing and in terms of the actual simulation, there is a lot that the team is doing. So we have the Coca-Cola iRacing series, which is a fully developed, high production level championship, which is broadcasted live with narrators, with sponsors. It very closely mimics the real life racing, but all in the virtual environment. So that's
Right.
one thing. For next year, it's going to have a bigger prize pool. It's going to have new rules, new incentives, new tracks to really engage in and make it a little bit more entertaining and exciting for potentially newer audiences. So that's what they're doing on that front. And then in the gaming side, I have to like keep in mind the things that I can and cannot say because a lot of it hasn't actually been released. But there
Oh,
are,
oh yeah. Like, keep like if there's anything that you gotta keep confidential, keep it
yeah,
confidential.
I'm
On
okay with.
that.
I can manage it, but there is new things coming out, very exciting games, very exciting partnerships and stuff like that, which are all tailored to reaching a younger audience. And so the question of how can we put NASCAR in front of those people and get those people to come watch their core product is a question that the entire team is currently trying to solve. I don't have the answer. Like it's not a cookie cutter. It's not pinpointing it to right here. Here's the answer, but rather it's a culmination of things which the team has been and will continue to work on. And so we'll see the results of that going into the future. In terms of me in particular, although my internship is over, I am very excited to announce that I am a freelancer for NASCAR. So I'm still working with the team. Even earlier today, I was doing a bunch of work for them. And going into, I still have school left because I'm not graduated yet. Going into my senior year, I'm still working with NASCAR as a freelancer. So I still have my foot in the door there and I have all the connections and whatnot. So I'll
Right on, man.
only, yeah, I appreciate it.
Congratulations.
I'll only see how that continues to grow and evolve as I continue to remain engaged with the team, which I'm happy to do. So hopefully, big things coming. I guess time will tell, and I guess stay tuned.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely awesome to hear, Oscar, and yeah, and congratulations on NASCAR keeping you on for sure. And you're like, in my opinion, like from what I saw for the work that you done, I thought you were one of the best interns, like in the class, like hands down, and and like
Likewise, I appreciate it.
yeah, for sure. And but yeah, and I just think that just looking at it from, not just, like somebody that's, work that's in the sports industry or even trying to encourage others, just speaking from, say if like I could put myself in the seat of, like I said, a kid that can come from school, finishes their homework and just wants to relax and, plug in the NASCAR game. I think what's really missing right now with NASCAR in the gaming spectrum, and how I feel like they're like F1, is kind of doing more of is just the consistency of releasing like a genuine NASCAR game where they could have like a proper career mode. Like you could go through a season, you can manage your own team, you can go and scout drivers. Like that's what I feel like the ideal NASCAR game should look like on like in the console side, to not only just encourage people to get into the sport and get those young eyeballs, but also just to provide that like just what it's like to be in the sport. I know I did an episode a while back talking about how much we love and need sports video games. We think about how we look at around different leagues, how they're able to release a game on a yearly basis, and but also make a game that's enticing to putting yourself in the seat of running your own team, like creating your own player,
Yeah,
or putting an expansion franchise in a new market. I mean, it's literally like real world stuff that people can do in a video game nowadays, and just trying to have that transition over into what's actually being done outside from the virtual world. I feel like that's one thing that people can learn about, like doing the same in the sport like NASCAR, because from what we saw over the summer, like going to the races, working closely with the people that are working in NASCAR, there's a lot that can be put in when we make the right NASCAR game.
absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head in the sense that there's such a big opportunity for NASCAR to be, particularly in the gaming side in terms of console gaming. A lot of people still play really old NASCAR games just to
Hmm.
play the game because the new ones have been a bit of a flop, to say the least. So I think that if NASCAR is able to work with a company, I have no idea what company, but if they are able to work with an EA, with an Activision, with a big developer to create a game that's actually engaging and exciting, I think there is a huge opportunity there to reach a younger audience. Um, Now, how will a NASCAR game compete with AAA titles, not even motorsports related? How are they going to compete with an eventual GTA 6? How are they going to compete with
Hmm.
the new, Call of Duties, the Fortnites, all of that? Not to mention the Formula Ones and the
Right.
rally games that are out there. I don't know. I think it'll be really interesting to see. But I think there is, significant demand for a NASCAR game, and a lot of people talk about it all the time on social media. So I think that if they are able to do it right and, create a game that's not only fun but also engaging and that shows people everything that goes on behind the scenes, I think there's a huge opportunity there, and I guess time will tell what happens. But definitely, have my fingers crossed and hoping for the best there because I'll definitely buy that as soon as it comes out. But I guess time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, like I haven't played video games in quite a while, but I'm sure if NASCAR were able to make the right game, I believe me, I will spend my money to go buy a PS5 or an Xbox and buy that NASCAR game that I've been dying to have since going back to my 7, 8, 10 year old days. When I was
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
played racing games nonstop. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and Oscar, like I wanna wrap up our time with this last question. You've been like an awesome guest, and you've given like a lot of information to the OFPs, and even also to me too. I'm learning a lot just from hearing you talk about like what you've done in sim racing and also what you've done in NASCAR. So, as far as where you see yourself taking OC racing, like from the YouTube channel, like continuing to grow the LLC that it is, and even just for yourself, as far as like the long term goals for the future, like what is something that you are looking to do when it comes to your channel, your career goals within sim racing, if that's something that you want to continue to pursue?
That's a question I get asked a lot, particularly from my parents and from people all the time. They're like, "Are you doing OC racing full time?" I'm like, "No, I'm a full time student." I don't know. I've always wanted to work in motorsports. I think that if I graduate and things are still going well with me in NASCAR, I would love to go full time there. I enjoyed my time. I like the atmosphere. The Charlotte office was sick. I'm not opposed to working for another company if it's doing something that I love and if it's something that I am like well compensated for, so to speak. That being said, the idea of can I take OC racing full time? Can I make it a lot bigger than it is? That's very much still on the table. And I'm doing things every single day to make that happen. Today, for example, or these last few days, I've made an entire affiliate website on it's like an addition to my website where people can find codes and discounts for sim racing products with companies that I've partnered with in the past. It's obviously an affiliate website where I receive a commission for every sale. But I know that some of my competitors on the YouTube space and from what I've talked to with other companies and whatnot, because people talk, and since I'm, traveling all around the world and meeting with these people, I'm able to have these conversations. I know that some people are making an insane amount of money and are living very well off by selling products with their affiliate links and stuff like that. So why am I not doing that? That's something that I'm starting to do. I've created. I wish I could go more into depth in terms of what I'm doing, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm doing. A bunch of graphics, a bunch of um, like lower thirds animations, a bunch of things that you wouldn't even think of, but to get people to go to the website, to check the links, to click on the links, and to buy using my codes, using my affiliates. So that's the affiliate marketing route is huge. Then there's the YouTube ad revenue thing, which it actually continues to diminish just because YouTube continues to pay worse and worse year after year, but we'll see where that goes. And then there's partnerships, advertisements. I've worked with companies like HelloFresh. I've worked with Ubisoft, a bunch of these companies that continue to reach out to me and will hopefully continue to do so in the future as I continue to grow. So I think the opportunities to make this a full time thing are definitely there, and I would definitely be keen on it. One of the things that I kind of dream about is having a full on media company where it's not just me doing everything, but I actually have a team of
Mm.
editors, a team of writers, a teams of, people who are filming, kind of like how Linus Tech Tips now has a full on media company where it's not just him making the videos.
Right.
I would love to do something like that. I've always when I was in Austin this past week, next to the offices of the company I was meeting with, there was a production company, and they let me go in and see like kind of their headquarters, and it was so so nice. It was like a modern aesthetic with wooden floors, nice colors. It's a whole like production team, so they have like their lights, their cameras, their white background. And all of that was like my dream. It was like I was imagining the OC Racing logo on that wall, and I was like, I want something exactly like this where I can create the content that I like to, and hopefully will expand and reach a greater audience. So will OC racing become a full time thing? It's still on the table. At the meantime, it's not possible, but the good thing is that I'm still a full time student and I still have these opportunities, different doors available to me. So we'll see where it goes. Hopefully, it does, and if it's not, then it will definitely continue to be a part time thing because it's something that I do enjoy doing, and I've reaped several rewards from it. I'm actually going to Germany in a few months, so all related to OC racing. So I'm excited for that.
You know, Oscar, just from hearing you talk about this, I mean, and and you can take how you want to take this, but I feel like my vision for you, for what you've already pretty much are doing, I can see yourself running your own race team. I mean, like a legitimate one, being the owner for, because you talk about how you've got the sponsors, you brought in, these companies. Like, I heard you mention that you brought in HelloFresh and Ubisoft. Those are some pretty big names, and and those are even some sponsors that I would believe could have a mainstay in NASCAR, like, or not even just NASCAR, but like maybe IndyCar, Formula One, any form of motorsport that comes to mind. I mean, you have the business knowledge, you have the, like, the growth, like you understand how to reach target markets. I mean, bro, like if I don't see OC racing somewhere in Formula One, NASCAR, IndyCar, like, and so I'll be upset, man. Like, I'm just telling you that, and
Yeah, no
you can take
pressure.
you can take it how you want that, man. But that's just how I can envision you taking your brand to like those heights. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I've actually seen the company I was with in Austin is a company called Track Racer. They make sim racing
Mhm.
cockpits. And they were the first sim racing company to have their logo on a Formula One car. So they were on the
Wow.
Alpine F1. They were on it this season. They were also on it on several races last
Oh,
season.
oh, word.
So imagine
Okay.
getting a company and your logo on a Formula One car. They were at the Miami Grand Prix. They were at, I think they were at Coda. They were at like the biggest races. So it's definitely something which I've thought of, but at the moment it's so distant away that it's not something that I really think about a lot. But the the door is definitely there to be open. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, most definitely, man. I mean, like you're doing everything right. I will say that. I mean, you're killing it on YouTube. Like, you're killing it in the business world. I'm sure you're killing it in school too. And yeah, hopefully we can see OC racing, reach new heights to, that, being you probably wouldn't even believe. I mean, that's something that we're shooting for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Phil, I have one question for you.
Oh, go
I
right ahead.
am I'm one of the most competitive people you'll ever meet. Like, I take everything, even if it's like a small competition, I'm like, I want to win this. One of those things was the NASCAR case competition, which, if I'm not mistaken, your team won. Is that
That's
right?
right. That's
So
right.
you were race operations or something like that, right?
Yeah, we were the competition group. So
Right.
yeah, pretty much anything that was like on track related, like as
Competition,
far as
right?
competition.
My presentation, a lot of it was made by me just because I have the graphical and videographical knowledge. So if you watch my presentation, it had videos, it had full on graphics, mock-ups, whatnot. I was told my presentation was the best looking one, which is cool. Whatever. I was in here for second or third place or whatever I ended up getting, but I wanted to win. What did you do and what did your team do that won that case competition? And if I'm not sure if your viewers know what we're talking about, but if not, you could start by explaining that.
Well, I mentioned this in when I was doing the NASCAR diversity series. How, like, one of the aspects involved when people are a part of the internship is we have a case study competition, which is more revolved around trying to find ways to help get younger fans into NASCAR, like, or more of a diverse that diverse fan base into the sport. And I would say that what my group did, even though, our I guess just to go a little bit more into what our presentation was about, like, it was revolving around trying to change the format of the championship, and the thing with it,
Ambitious.
yeah, yeah, right, like, yeah, and the thing with it was, like, even though, like, the playoff format has been something that's NASCAR has become accustomed to and trying to delegate, having like eliminations by round. What we really wanted to touch on, or what we really wanted to include, was more of a team-based focus, because one of the misconceptions that people have about NASCAR is that it's just one driver controlling the car, but in reality, like, NASCAR drivers have to work with pit crews, they have to work with crew chiefs, work with their spotters, and I feel like when we think about the pit crews, they play just as big of a role in helping a driver win a race more than the driver does, because one bad pit stop could ruin the driver's race. And
Mhm.
I think when I think about how NASCAR is trying to do more promotion for the pit crew guys. With them, most of them being like ex college athletes or ex NFL players. And I feel like to add more storyline, to add more intensity to the competition, we wanted to integrate point scoring system where we could give a race team or a driver one bonus or like a set of bonus points for having the fastest pit stop times for during each race, like having the average fastest pit stop time for each race, or even speed on the track, where if they had the fastest lap time, they could get a bonus point, and even not so much having stage racing, but also having or trying to change stage racing into overall point scoring, where like the overall finishing positions at the end of the race, they will be awarded, like on a 5 count, where the winner would get this, like in 10th place would get this, and then it'll trickle down to 1 point, just to have those incremental points for the drivers that probably didn't do so well in a particular race. So it was really just came down to trying to make the competition a little bit more team based, but also make it a little bit more like not so much like in as a championship format, because not to assimilate so much to other sports, but just also add more of an incentive on trying to run well and not trying to rely so much on getting awarded points at the end of the stage, because at the end of the stage, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you win the first stage, the second stage. All that matters is you getting the checker flag at the end.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I wanted that me and my group integrated when we came up with our idea for the case study competition. But
It
yeah, yeah.
it seems like me, and what I think happens is, I think when it comes to the actual presentation, like how it looks, I don't think anybody's beating me, respectfully. Like, no shot.
Like, well, like your presentation skills were like top notch. I mean,
I
yeah, like
appreciate it.
just yeah.
I wish the viewers knew what I was talking about, because I spent so much time on like a super highly edited, like trailer video, bunch of graphics everywhere, the entire cohesion of the presentation, etc. But I think what my team lost on was the actual idea. It wasn't the most innovative idea, and I knew that. And so hearing yours and like what you came up with, it does make sense. It's like, yes, I understand why. I'm still mad about that, because like I said, I'm so competitive, and there was nothing more I wanted to win. So when I heard you guys won, I was like, damn, like I wasn't like good for Phil. I was like, damn, I lost. But I guess it just goes back to just being super, super competitive, which is both a good and a bad thing. But congratulations on that. Your ideas definitely sounded very intriguing, so I'm not surprised.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Hey, it's like it is what it is. I mean, I'll be honest. I was even surprised that we even won. I mean, like, well, based on like just the presentation of everything, I thought like our idea was cool enough, but I mean, it just felt like we had to. I don't know, like we didn't really. It didn't seem like we had to pull a lot of strings to try to promote this new championship format. But
Yeah.
at times in the back of my mind, I was thinking like, man, is this really going to sell? I feel like we're kind of disrupting with NASCAR's idea of what they want the championship to look like. But it seemed like they liked it, and yeah, just kind of carried on from there.
Well, interesting. That's interesting to hear, but I'm glad it ended up working out for you. I think that being in the case study group that you were in, you definitely had probably some of the most leeway in terms of creating an innovative idea.
Mhm.
Just because I think most of your team was based in Daytona, whereas um, most people that I was talking to obviously were based here, and as thus had most of their team members also here. So I could hear a lot about what they were doing, but nobody really knew what you guys were doing. So that's
Yeah,
interesting to hear.
we were one of those low key groups. I mean, we kind of kept silent for that. I mean, yeah, I think I know. There was only like a few of interns that we had up in trial, but no, like most of our team was Daytona based.
Yeah. Well, I just want you to know I really did put my heart and effort into beating you, and you pulled through. So congrats on that.
Thank you, man. Wait, like I'll just tell you this. I mean, you're probably a lot more better than me on the sim rig than I am. I mean, just say that.
I'd hope
Yeah,
so. With the amount of hours I've spent on it, I'd really hope so.
yeah.
I know
But
I beat you in the go karting, so that's
oh,
all
that,
I got.
let's not even get into that. Oh my gosh, man, the go karting. Oh, yeah, that was one of the cool things. Like, if for anybody that wants to go check that out, go check out the vlog that I did for the orientation week for NDIP, and you'll talk about the go karting and
You'll
that.
see how
But
I
yeah, like
smoked everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. But hey Oscar, man, it's been a pleasure having you on the Off Field Players podcast. You have been an awesome guest, and yeah, and I'm like, just very happy for you to come on and tell the OFPs about your climb through the sim racing, through being a YouTube content creator, and also just being an intern at NASCAR. A lot has been learned, a lot has been realized, and even a lot of it has been motivational for the OFPs that are trying to get into the motorsports field, or even in a way trying to get into the esports realm as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it. If there's something that I love talking about, it's sim racing and real world motorsports. So this was a ton of fun for me. Also learned a lot from you. I think that if there's something that I will say, I'm not sure if the OFPs are all related to motorsports or if it's all types of sports in general. I
It's a
think
wide
there's
group.
okay,
It's like
good.
every sport on the planet.
I
Think
think
about
there is so many opportunities to get into sports wherever it is that you're interested in going into. I think you just have to be very creative in the way that you get about going to. So I have a friend who is into golf and she's like, I want to get into golf. I what do I do? And I was like, start a YouTube channel or start something online where you can have your own presence, your own content and show what you can do. Tailor it to golf and make the best possible content that you can, and people will see that. It's essentially a portfolio that can make you money, and then use that to apply to get your foot in the door, to meet with companies and stuff like that. Like, it's obviously a ton of work. Like, please don't think that what I did was, a walk in the park. I've spent more hours on this than I have on my 4-year university degree, which is insane to think about. But there is a way, if you're passionate about it, if you really care about it, you can make it happen. You just have to put in the work, be creative, and your spot will come. So that's kind of what I've learned through everything that I've done in my path so far. But yeah, thank you for having me, Phil. It's been super fun having this conversation.
Yeah, that likewise, man. And also like I don't want to forget because I know Oscar said he's trying to reach a goal of 100K subscribers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave all of Oscar's information for his YouTube channel, TikTok, and Instagram, so you guys can make sure to go follow his content, OC Racing. And yeah, so like all of that will be in the description down below. If you guys want to follow Oscar's Instagram account for his YouTube channel. It's OC underscore sim racing on Instagram. Again, it's at OC underscore sim racing on Instagram. You want to go follow him there. But again, I'll leave all of his information down below in the description so you guys can know where to find him. And also, as a reminder, if you watch the video version of this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video to anybody that's interested in wanting to work in the sports industry or at least learn about it. Of course, another reminder, make sure to follow the Off Field Players podcast on all the audio platforms that I produce episodes on: Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Radio Public. And also follow the Instagram page for the Off Field Players podcast. It's at OFP underscore podcast. Again, the Off Field Players podcast Instagram page is at OFP underscore podcast. And if you want to follow the podcast on Twitter, it's just Off Field Players podcast with Philip Hall. So yeah, that's gonna wrap it up here for me. Happy again to have Oscar, also known as OC Racing on Instagram or on YouTube, on the Off Field Players podcast, and hopefully what's been said has motivated all the OFPs to continue to strive, continue to grow, and also find ways to represent yourself before you represent someone else, like through your platform, and creating your own portfolio. And yeah, just continue to motivate yourself to become the off-field player of the future. But anyway, that's going to wrap it up for me. I've been your host, Philip Hall, and along with my guest for today, Oscar, also known as OC Racing. And just want to make sure to tell everybody to stay safe, stay motivated, stay blessed, stay healthy. And as always, make sure to achieve what you believe.
That's nice. I like that.